Hi, my name is Ramika Simmons and I'm a Liberty University MPH student. I'm going to be talking to you today about my practicum project, which was on rickettsial diseases. So first we're going to take a look at our first slide, project details. Over a 17-week period, I conducted case studies with 37 participants within the Crater Health District of Petersburg, Virginia. We gathered the information through EPI-1 sheets that physician offices sent to us via the fax. This information detailed what type of disease we were looking at and minor details on the levels that were found within the laboratory test. Once we got these EPI-1 sheets, we requested additional medical records so that we could do a initial analysis. After that, we conducted phone interviews with the participants, and based on those phone interviews and the medical records, we separated out the information based on the disease and geographical areas. So on to our next slide. So objectives and goals. We wanted to reach 80% of the participants. In this day and time, everybody's busy, so it's a little bit more difficult to reach everyone, but 80% we felt was a reachable number. Unfortunately, we weren't able to reach 80%. We reached 63% roughly of the participants and were able to get information from them and let them tell us their story about their disease and what happened with them. Our other goal was to map geographically the different diseases, 100% of these mapping tools. We were able to reach that at 100%. We were able to map throughout the county where each of these diseases were and possible causal agents. So on to our next slide. Little disease background for you. Dr. Howard T. Ricketts, who was a pathologist, was the first to discover rickettsial diseases and their transmission vectors, which are ticks or other louse-like animals. Sir Edward Maxey was the first to provide a clinical description of spotted fever. So the clinical description is details to you what happens in the body and how it affects the body. Untreated, rickettsial diseases can be up to 75% fatal. The most common rickettsial diseases that are found in Virginia are Lyme's disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, ehrlichiosis, and anaplasmosis. Tick season is during the warmer months, so April through September, during the time when most people are vulnerable because, as you know, when it's warmer, we're wearing fewer clothes, so, shorts, flip-flops, things of that nature. So on to our next slide. So I'm going to give you a little overview of the 4 diseases that I looked at. So we've got Rocky Mountain spotted fever caused by the bacteria Rickettsia rickettsii. It's transmitted by the American dog tick and Lone Star tick. Common symptoms are across the board: fever, headache, myalgia, nausea, vomiting, a rash. Severe symptoms for Rocky Mountain spotted fever: anemia, thrombocytopenia, loss of limb, or death. That is also across the board. In severe cases, it can cause death in all 4 of these diseases. ELISA and the PCR are the diagnostic tests that are used to diagnose these diseases, specifically for Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and antibiotics help to combat the disease. For Lyme's disease, Borrelia burgdorferi is the causal bacteria. It's transmitted by blackleg ticks. A hallmark symptom for Lyme's disease and Lyme's disease only is the erythromelia migrans, which is the big red bullseye rash. That is a hallmark classic sign of Lyme's disease. Severe symptoms for Lyme's disease are radiculoneuropathy, arthritis, Bell's palsy, and a 2nd and 3rd degree atrioventricular block. That's a block within the heart. The ELISA and the Western blot are the diagnostic tests. And once again, antibiotics are the best way to combat the disease. So on to our next slide. We're going to take a look at anaplasmosis and ehrlichiosis. Ehrlichia schophanis is the bacteria for anaplasmosis. It's transmitted by the Lone Star tick. Common symptoms are headache and fever, rash. Severe symptoms for anaplasmosis, thrombocytopenia, abnormal liver function test, and death. ELISA and PCR are the laboratory tests that are used for diagnosis, and antibiotics, as with the other three. Ehrlichiosis, the causal bacteria is Ehrlichia. It's transmitted by the Lone Star tick, headache, fever, so on and so forth for common symptoms. And for severe symptoms, difficulty breathing, low white blood cell count, and platelet counts. Neurological problems as well. And with, as with its counterparts, ELISA and PCR can be treated with antibiotics as well. So let's look at our results coming up next to the next slide. Now you may see that some of these numbers don't quite add up for the county breakdown, and I'll explain to you why. Like I said, I had 37 participants. The interesting thing is that you can be diagnosed with more than one rickettsial disease at a time. Some ticks carry more than one of the bacterias, and you're able to be infected with more than one of the tick-borne illnesses. So Prince George, had the most infections, followed closely by Chesterfield with 8, Dinwiddie, and bringing up the rear would be Greensville. So we're going to look over here at this pie chart for a second. We had 73% were Rocky Mountain spotted fever. As I noted earlier, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, anaplasmosis, and Lyme's disease and ehrlichiosis can be double infections. So you can have Rocky Mountain spotted fever and anaplasmosis, or you can have Lyme's disease and ehrlichiosis. There were several occasions where there were double infections. So that's something that can happen. Interestingly enough, talk about some symptoms one more time really quickly. Some of the participants noted not having any symptoms at all. So that is a common symptom, no symptoms. So we'll look at the follow-up phone calls, and 26 people total were reached with the follow-up phone calls. There were 12 that were not reached. The phone calls consisted of an interview where they told us about their symptoms, where they had traveled to, things of that nature, and we also were able to give them a little bit of a learning session to explain to them ways to prevent future infections and things of that nature. So we wanted to make sure that they were using DEET, and when they went outside, covering their skin, long sleeves, when they were outside doing yard work or cutting the grass or what have you. It's a little more difficult to get people to do that during the summer months. So, but that's what the educational session consisted of. And so lastly, I'm going to bring you to my references page. These references help me as I prepared my paper and as I also prepared this presentation. I hope you enjoyed this brief overview. Just a little look into some of the rickettsial diseases and how they can affect humans within Virginia and throughout the world. Thank you and good day.